One Piece chapter 1186 may have revealed something much bigger than Shuri simply being Gunko. Because after this chapter, I do not think Imu simply wanted Shuri just because she was the daughter of a celestial dragon. I do not even think Imu wanted her because she could become a holy knight. And I do not think that her eyes are just a cool design choice. See, I think that Shuri may have been born with the potential to awaken a power so dangerous that Imu had to take her before she could fully understand what she was. And that power may not be a devil fruit. It may be Haki, not just basic Haki, not even normal observation or Conqueror's Haki. I'm talking about a rare form of willpower that may be connected to sight, future awareness, resistance to possession, and possibly the same kind of ancient Haki Joy Boy, and possibly the same kind of Haki or ancient Haki Joy Boy used to protect Luffy through Emet. Because think about what chapter 1186 tells us. Saint Manmayer Groh has the same rare eyes as Shuri, and Groh admits he could not awaken his own eyes, but Shuri might. And then the moment he starts explaining too much, Imu shuts him down. That is not random. Oda is hiding the real answer. So the question is not just, what are Shuri's eyes? The real question is, why does Imu want them? And why would Imu need to turn Shuri into Gunko before she awakened? Because if Shuri's power is connected to will, then Imu may have simply created a weapon. Imu may have created or captured a future threat. Now, to understand this theory, we have to go back to the truth of Esperia. At first, the story makes it seem like the world governments demanded 1,000 slaves because Esperia failed to pay the heavenly tribute. That already sounded cruel, but chapter 1186 changes the situation. The world government did not simply come for the slaves. They came for Shuri. Imu wanted Shuri, and that changes the entire tragedy because now the slave demand looks less like the real objective and more like a cover-up, a decoy, a public excuse, a way to pressure Esperia, start a war, and hide the real mission. Because if the world government destroys a kingdom over unpaid tribute, people may see it as a normal world government's cruelty. But if the world government destroys a kingdom because they want one little girl, then people start asking dangerous questions like, why Shuri? What does she have that makes her so important? Why does Imu want her? Why is a bloodline so important? And why is Saint Manmayer Groh, a knight of God, personally involved? That is the trail Imu would not want anybody following. So King Reuven may have been trapped in a situation where the public story was about slaves, but the real pressure was about Shuri. And that makes his choice even more tragic because Reuven did not just refuse a political demand. He refused to hand over his daughter. He stood 10 toes down and protected her till the end. Not because she was biologically his, but because she was his child in every way that mattered. And that is exactly why Imu's power is so evil, my people. Imu did not just destroy kingdoms. He does not just destroy kingdoms. Imu uses love as a weapon. See, this chapter reveals that Saint Manmayer Groh is Shuri's biological father. And that reveal is so important. But the emotional point of the chapter is that Groh being her biological father does not make him her real father. King Reuven was her real father because One Piece has always made this distinction very clear. Blood does not define family. Love does. Belmere was Nami's mother. Whitebeard's crew were his sons. Kuma was Bonnie's father. And Reuven was Shuri's father. That is why Shuri's corruption is so painful. Under Domi Reversi, she rejects the love that raised her. She talks about King Reuven, like he was not her father. She treats Brook like it was patronizing. She looks at the life she led at Esperia as weakness, but that is not the real Shuri speaking clearly. That is love being inverted. That is the whole horror of Domi Reversi. It does not just erase memories, it twists the meaning of those memories. This matters for the theory because if Imu's power works by twisting will, then someone with powerful will enough may be able to resist it. That may be exactly why Shuri had to be taken early, because if she had awakened her true powers of her eyes, Imu may not have been able to control her. Now, Saint Manmayer Groh gave us the biggest clue. Her eyes are the same rare eyes as Shuri, but he says he could not awaken his. That line is extremely important because it tells us that the eyes are not automatically powerful just because someone is born with them. There is a difference between having the trait and awakening the power. Groh Groh has the bloodline. Groh has the eyes. Groh has the status. Groh is a celestial dragon. Groh is a knight of God. And yet he could not awaken or activate whatever those eyes are supposed to become. That tells me that this power may not be tied to blood alone. It may be tied to will, because that is how One Piece usually works. The strongest powers are not only inherited physically, they're awakened through spirit, through desire, through will, through a person's true self. That is why Shuri may be different from Groh. Groh may have the bloodline, but may not have the will. Shuri, on the other hand, was raised with love. She was raised outside the Holy Land. She was raised away from the arrogance of the celestial dragons. She had bonds. She had empathy. She had Brook. She had King Reuven. She had a real life. And maybe that is exactly why she had the potential Groh lacked. Maybe the eyes do not awaken through pure blood. Maybe they awaken through willpower. And if that's true, then the world government's mistake was leaving Shuri in Esperia long enough to develop a real heart. Now, this is where earlier parts of the flashback become very important, because even when Shuri was a child, she seemed unusual. There were moments where it felt like she could sense things before it happened, like she had an awareness beyond a normal child, almost like she could feel danger before it happened, almost like she could see the direction events were moving. Now, that does not automatically mean she has future sight or had future sight, but it does suggest her perception was special. And if her eyes are connected to advanced forms of observation haki, then that will make sense. Maybe Shuri's eyes allows her to see possibilities. Maybe they allow her to see intentions, right? Maybe they allow her to recognize danger before it appears. Maybe they allow her to see through illusions, possessions, or false identities. And if Imu is someone who survives through hidden presence, possessions, shadows, and control, then a person who can truly see may be dangerous. That would explain why Imu desires Shuri's eyes, not just because they are powerful, but because they might eventually see through Imu. But I think it may go even deeper than observation. What if Shuri's eyes are connected to Conqueror's Haki, and not just normal Conqueror's Haki, right? What if it's an advanced form of willpower so rare that it even rivals the kind of Haki Joy Boy used? Because after Egghead, we have to change how we think about Haki. Joy Boy's Haki was not just strong. It lasted centuries. It was stored inside of Emet, a robot. It waited across time. And when Luffy needed protection, that Haki was released. Do you realize how insane that is? That is not just a powerful attack. That is willpower surviving time itself. That is Haki so advanced that it can be perceived, released, and still terrify the highest powers in the world centuries later. So when Groh says that he could not awaken his eyes, but Shuri might, then we should ask, what if the awakening is not about sight alone? What if it is about the will so strong that eyes become the expression of it itself? The type of Haki that can resist Imu. A type of Haki that can protect others. A type of Haki that can see across danger, time, and intention. A type of Haki that Imu cannot allow grow freely. Because if Imu fears Joy Boy's Haki, then Imu would absolutely fear someone who might awaken something similar, right? And that may be the reason why Shuri became Gunko. Imu did not just want another soldier. Imu wanted to capture a dangerous will before it became free. And this fits Imu's pattern so much. Imu does not just destroy threats. Imu absorbs them, controls them, twists them, right? Turns them into tools. And that is exactly what happened with Shuri. If Shuri had the potential to awaken a power that could oppose Imu, then the smartest move would be to take her young, break her identity, invert her emotions, and turn her into a weapon for the Holy Land. That is what Gunko may be, not the real Shuri, but Shuri after Imu possessed or forced her potential into a cage. And that makes the name Gunko feel even more important, because Shuri is the person, Gunko is the weapon. Shuri is the girl raised with love, Gunko is the form created by the world government. Shuri is the child raised and protected by King Reuven, Gunko is the soldier Imu uses. That is why saving her is not just about breaking the ice, it's about breaking the identity Imu built over her. Because if Shuri's real will awakens, then Gunko may not survive as a mask. This also changes how we look at the moment Shuri stabbed Brook. See, on the surface, it looked like Shuri tried to kill him, right? She attacks him. She uses his own technique against him. She pierced his head and Brook collapses. But the fact that Brook survives is too specific to ignore. The doctor said the blade missed the major blood vessels and the brainstem. This is not just about he just got lucky. This is extremely precise of an injury. And earlier, we already had hints that Shuri may have had some strange awareness, right? So what if some part of the real Shuri guided that strike? What if Domi Reversi forced her to attack Brook, but the real Shuri controlled where the blade went? Maybe she couldn't stop it herself. Maybe she could not speak honestly. Maybe she could not fight Imu's possession directly. But maybe she could choose not to kill him. And that will mean Brook survived because Shuri spared him. And that will completely change the emotional meaning of the scene. See, Brook thinks he witnessed Shuri become a demon. But maybe, just maybe, even in that demonic form, the real Shuri was still trying to protect him. And if that is true, then Shuri has been fighting Imu from the beginning. Not loudly, not openly, but through small acts of resistance. Leaving Brook alive, going with Groh to stop the war, keeping some part of her buried inside of Gunko. And if that is the case, then Brook may be the person who can reach her now because Brook is living proof that Shuri was never fully gone. This is why Brook's music matters. Brook's song plays while he's being stabbed, and with Brook, music is never just music. Music is a memory. Music is grief. Music is inherited will. Music is how Brook carries the dead with him. The Rumbar pirates live through music. Laboon waits because of music. Brook survived decades of loneliness because of music. So if Imu's power twists memories and emotions, then Brook's music may be the thing that restores them. That could be the key to saving Shuri. Not just attacking her, not just breaking the ice, not just overwhelming Gunko, but reaching the real Shuri through memories Imu could not fully erase. Because Domi Reversi may poison love, but it does not seem to destroy it completely. That is the opening, and Brook is the perfect character for that. He is not just a swordsman, he is a musician. He is a living skeleton carrying memories of the dead. He understands loss better than almost anyone in the crew. So if anyone can reach a girl trapped inside a corrupted identity, it may be Brook. In the present, the Straw Hats are trying to figure out how to break Shuri out of the ice, right? But the more I think about it, the more I believe the ice is not the real prison. The ice is just the physical barrier. The real prison is Imu's mark. Because if they break the ice while Imu's control is still active, Shuri could be possessed again. And that will be double trouble, right? The Straw Hats could free her body but release Gunko back onto the battlefield. That is why saving Shuri has to happen in two stages. First, they have to get her out of the ice, right? But second, and more importantly, they have to free her will. And that is where Shuri's eyes may come back in play. Maybe the power inside Shuri is the very thing that can break Imu's control. Maybe Imu wanted her eyes because those can resist possession. Maybe Shuri's true awakening is not about being strong physically. Maybe it's about seeing herself clearly again. Seeing Brook, seeing Reuven, seeing Esperia, seeing the truth that Imu twisted. And if her eyes awaken in that moment, Imu may lose control of that one of the most important or valuable weapons they ever created. Or maybe Loki's eyes will. Now let's talk about Luffy, because chapter 1186 gives us a line that I do not think we should ignore. Luffy hears about the crazy new guy attacking Elbaf. He says that that guy is Elbaf's enemy. Then he adds that he is his enemy too. Now to me, this line is very, very interesting because yes, Luffy protects people. Yes, Luffy does not like anyone hurting his friend. The way he says it feels personal. How does Luffy know Imu is his enemy too. Is he sensing something? Is there something inside Luffy that recognizes Imu? Is that connected to Nika? Is that connected to Joy Boy? Is that connected to the will carried by the fruit? I'm not saying that Luffy suddenly has memories of Joy Boy. That will be way too fast, right? But what if Luffy's body, fruit, or will can feel the natural enemy in front of him? What if Nika recognizes the darkness of Imu even before Luffy fully understands who Imu is? That will make this moment huge because Luffy is not just fighting a random villain. He may be standing in front of the person his power was always meant to oppose. Joy Boy versus Imu. Nika versus the Hidden King. Liberation versus control. And Luffy may be starting to feel that instinctively. Then, in this chapter, Imu reveals that 800 years ago, the giants fell because they tried to rescue their children. That is one of the most important lines in this chapter because it tells us what is happening in Elbaf is not random, or it's a repeat. Imu is using the same strategy that worked in the Void Century. Take the children, force the giants to react, use love against them, break them through what they care about the most. This connects directly with Shuri. Imu used Reuven's love for Shuri. Imu used Brook's love for Shuri. Imu is using the giants' love for their children. That is the pattern, right? That is the pattern. Imu weaponizes love, and that is why Luffy is the perfect enemy. Because Luffy does not see love as a weakness. Luffy's entire journey is built on bonds. He fights for his friends. He liberates countries because he cares about the people. He does not see attachments as a flaw. He sees it as the reason to fight. So when Imu says that the giants fell because they tried to save their children, Luffy's very existence rejects that logic. Because to Luffy, saving people is not why you lose, it's why you fight harder. That is why Luffy punching Imu is such a powerful moment. This is not just a cool action scene. This is Sabaody on a bigger scale. At Sabaody, Luffy punched St. Charlos because Charlos represented celestial dragon cruelty. He treated people like property, right? He believed that his blood made him untouchable. And Luffy shattered that illusion with one punch. But in Elbaf, Luffy is not punching the spoiled product of the system. He's punching the source, the hidden ruler, the person behind the world that creates people like Charlos. That is why the parallel matters. Sabaody was Luffy punching the face of the celestial dragon system. Elbaf is Luffy punching the shadow behind it. And the speed of that punch matters too, right? Luffy comes flying through Loki's arms so fast that Imu barely has the time to process it. The attack is massive. Gear 3rd size, right? Haki coded. Possibly coded in the Conqueror's Haki. And Luffy tells Imu, yo, you gotta pack up. Get out of Elbaf. Like, that line is perfect. Because Imu is talking about history. Imu is talking about how the giants lost 800 years ago. Imu is talking like the future is already decided. Like, guy. And Luffy's answer is not a debate. It's a punch. That is why Luffy breaks history. Imu believes the world is trapped in patterns, and Luffy is the person who interrupts those patterns. Now, this is where the theory comes together, okay? Shuri may represent a will Imu tried to capture. Luffy represents the will Imu cannot control. Shuri's eyes may be an awakening Imu feared, and Luffy's fruit is the awakening Imu failed to stop. Shuri was taken before she could become free. Luffy is freedom itself. That is why chapter 1186 puts these two storylines side by side. Brook wants to save Shuri from Imu's control. Luffy arrives to punch Imu directly. One storyline is about freeing a person's stolen identity, and the other is about attacking the source of the theft. And if Shuri's power is tied to advanced Haki, will, or perception, then Luffy may be exactly the person who creates the opening for that power to awaken. Because Luffy does not just defeat villains, he brings people back to themselves. Nami asks for help. Robin said she wants to live. Sanji returns to the Sunny. Momo becomes a leader, right? Bonnie regains hope. And now Shuri may have to remember who she was before Imu renamed her Gunko. That is the real battle. Not Shuri versus Brook. Not Gunko versus the Straw Hats. It's Shuri versus the identity Imu forced on her. So what does Imu really fear? I do not think it's just strength, right? Imu has monsters. Imu has the five elders, right? Imu has the holy knights, okay? Imu has ancient weapons, secret knowledge, and the power to erase islands. Strength alone is not enough to scare Imu. So what Imu fears is uncontrollable will. That is why Joy Boy is dangerous. That is why Nika is dangerous. That is why the D-Clan is dangerous. That is why inherited will is also dangerous. And that may be why Shuri is dangerous. Because if Shuri's eyes can awaken a will that sees through control, resists possession, or rivals ancient Haki, then Imu would not want her dead. Imu would want her own. Because killing a future threat removes one problem, right? But controlling that threat turns the problem into a weapon. That may be why Shuri becomes Gunko. Imu does not just steal a child, Imu stole a future. So after chapter 1186, I think Shuri may be one of the most important characters in Elbaf. Not because she is the strongest person on the battlefield right now, but because of what she might awaken. Saint Manmayer Groh has the eyes but could not awaken them. Shuri may have the potential even as a child, right? Her strange awareness may have been an early sign, right? Her attack on Brook may have been more precise than a first look. And Imu wanting her so badly suggests that her powers matter deeply to the future of the story. Maybe it's advanced observation. Maybe it's advanced Conqueror's Haki. Maybe it's a rare form of will tied to her eyes. Maybe it's something that can resist Imu's control. But whatever it is, Imu wanted it before Shuri could fully become herself. That is the tragedy. Shuri was not just taken from Esperia, she was taken from her own future. And now Brook and the Straw Hats may be the ones who will reclaim it. At the same time, Luffy calling Imu his enemy to suggest something even bigger. Yo, maybe Luffy is starting to recognize Imu as the same enemy of Nika. Maybe his will is reacting before his mind understands. Maybe the final saga is finally bringing Joy Boy and Imu face to face again through Luffy. And if that's true, then chapter 1186 did not just set up a fight. It set up two awakenings. Shuri awakening the truth of who she is, and Luffy awakening to the enemy he was always meant to defeat. So let me know what you guys think. Are Shuri's eyes connected to advanced Haki? Or did Shuri spare Brook on purpose? And Brook's music bring the real Shuri back? And did Luffy recognize Imu because of Nika, Joy Boy, or something even deeper? Because if Imu wanted Shuri before she awakened, then Shuri may not be Imu's weapon forever. She may be one of the keys to defeating him.